Om Drishram Pratitam Pravilapayan Sanmatram Anandaganam Vibhavayam Samahita Sanbahir Antaram Va Kalam Yayetaha Sati Karma Bande. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Brahman is an indeterminable mass of pure conscious awareness. Therefore, taking what is external and what is internal, render them into one indivisible state. Then meditate upon that state, pass your time contentedly, and be free. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Purnamadaha Purnamudachyate. Purnat Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. What is within is infinite. What is external, though finite in nature, is also infinite. From the infinite the finite has come, yet being infinite, only infinite remains. Om peace, peace, peace. Om Sahana, Om Sahana Bhavatu, Sahanau Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvi Navaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May Brahman sustain us. May Brahman illumine our thinking process. May we not find fault with each other, with the world, or with the teachings. And may what we study be a source of inspiration to us eternally. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om. We've gathered on this day, the second class in a row here in Portland at its SRV Association's chapter, and we have just concluded our birthday puja for Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, whose birthday was this week, and we offered flowers and garland and a beautiful chalisa, 40 verses composed about his divine life. A divine life which we all hope to live. Maybe not quite as transcendent as his, or we wouldn't be able to do our jobs and our work and raise our children and so forth, but at least working in huge amounts of, as much as we can, succeed in working in huge amounts of this Dharma that we're studying. And we have been studying it in the Adhyatma Upanishad. And we also were studying it last weekend in terms of the Amrita Bindu Upanishad. So we welcome the live streaming audience here to us, people in Hungary, people in Iceland, people in India, people in Hawaii, my own home, and then down to San Francisco and in parts of the United States where our students dwell. And we welcome you all here as a Sangha, a part of an extended family of 6 million devotees of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa on his birthday. And hopefully good solidarity will be developed between all of us around the world, because the world, of course, is always in need of healing and of concrescence, of different kinds of help. And, we feel like the Dharma from Mother India is the best of all healers. It's not its best use, I'd say. Just like meditation's best use isn't to necessarily get a vision, but developing character along the way is more of the point for us. This character that is sterling and causes positive change that doesn't change. Most of the works that we do, as we studied yesterday, from bad to good to mix, that we suffer and enjoy in the world, always change, and they're always flip-flopping. And so there's a kind of sterling character that does an act in the world, and that act stays. I could see for 2,000 years in the case of Jesus, and 2,500 years in case of Lord Buddha, and thousands of years in the cases of Sri Krishna and Sri Ram, whose teachings you studied yesterday on karma. In reference to that verse, when a load of innate impulses get dissolved without residue by means of the cloud of virtues, then heaps of karma, good and evil, get totally eradicated. That was verse 39 in the Adhyatma Upanishad. So we took apart the dynamics of karma. We looked at the refinement and the rebirth and refinement over several lifetimes of a soul that's advancing towards enlightenment, a sort of krama mukti, stage by stage enlightenment that is dawning on people, because many of us won't be able to jump to the highest step of Advaita Vedanta, or in other words, realize that our true self is perfect and leave the body and senses behind. Because the body and senses and nature have a hold on the mind. Like I said yesterday, we've been taught by our modern day savants that we've come from animals. That's just the body possibly that did that. I'm even doubting that, but the real fact is that animals came from us, and all things came from the mind is the way of putting that in all the Indian darshanas, that the mind projects everything and withdraws it, just like you do every night in deep sleep. When you melt all this, you dissolve without residue. But in the case of deep sleep, you dissolve it with residue. That is, you still have these inherent karmas when you go into deep sleep, and you're just temporarily free of them. You don't have your ego anymore. You don't know who you are, what to call yourself, where you are. And that ego has been put to sleep temporarily, but all of this comes dancing back when you wake up. So there is a state of mind in which waking and dreaming and deep sleep don't exist. Last night, while we were eating prasad from Sri Ramakrishna's birthday, a question was asked about the fire of yoga. The fire of yoga is really Brahman. That is its union with Brahman. And that union, called samadhi and so forth, is what the Rishi is trying to teach us here when he talks about totally eradicated karmas and the with no residue that come back. There are good souls who live lives, go to heaven, and then find themselves back on earth. There's a residue of karma there. One of the subtlest of all karmas, it's the last to go, is the desire for rebirth, the desire to take a body. That's very deep in us, and that was our primal error, to take a form away from Brahman. At least if you can't do it consciously. I'll repeat what I said yesterday when they asked Swami Vivekananda, should a man be reborn? And he said, I certainly hope he does not till he can do so in full consciousness. So we do have examples in recent history and even today of beings who are taking conscious births, which means they must have had a conscious death prior to this. And it has been explained then nicely in the Gita by Sri Krishna how consciousness gets refined in stages, and that's an apparent movement. It's not, we are talking about karma being a relative law, but it's also a law that is inscrutable, as Holy Mother said. She was talking about how you have to pay for the use of this body-mind mechanism to the last farthing, is one of her quotes. rather funny because she used the English word for money there, but it shows the English were there in the country at her time. So to pay for the use of this body-mind mechanism to the last farthing means that there is suffering as far as Lord Buddha is concerned. And we were talking yesterday about how Krishna and Buddha and Holy Mother were like, in 3 periods of time, exemplars of the middle path. They knew that everyone couldn't be monks and just automatically eradicate their karma, give up their families, leave their jobs, and wander away. Have thou no home can hold thee, friend. The sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, and food what chance may bring, well cooked or ill, judge not. That kind of station of mind, which Vivekananda wrote a poem about, that kind of free wanderer, or Jivan Mukta. Well, we're about to get to the verses on Jivan Mukta. There's about 7 or 8 of them that are dealing with the Jivan Mukta, that is the living liberated soul. Jivan, body, embodied, Mukta, liberated. So scriptures of India have provided for that for hundreds and thousands of years. It wasn't really emphasized, or it had been submerged in an ocean of other teachings that were more prevalent to those ages that were passing. But when Shankara came along, he brought it back, talking about Jivan Mukta, because his teacher's teacher, Gaudapada, had talked so much about the principle of non-origination, how the seers had looked deep into themselves and, as I was just saying, found everything there. You'd have to study your deep sleep state again to know that all the seeds for this are in there. You projected this universe, not God, unless you find that you are God, which is part and parcel of the Advaita too. Then you find yourself to be witness of what you project. Otherwise, you get all involved in it. I've often talked about the wizard who created a world with his magic wand and was fascinated with it. And then he was so fascinated he dropped his wand and stepped into it. And then he got caught in it and couldn't get out. This is his own projection. And when he did wake up and find out that he was caught in his own projection, he looked for his wand and said, "Oh, I can get out of this." So people are looking for their true nature like that, to wake up from the waking state. You know what Ramana Maharshi said, this is dream number 1. You must sort of envision that all of a sudden you could just see through this and there would be nothing but the light of consciousness. And then you'd understand Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa's great samadhis that he was having all the time. He wasn't content with waking or dreaming. I was talking to someone yesterday about the dream state, and they were asking about lucid dreaming. And I said, well, yeah, if you use it in the contemporary sense of the term, people want to enjoy lots of things in their dream that they can't enjoy out here in the waking dream, because there's too many laws in the way, too many strictures and weights. You can't just do anything you want here. And I go into prisons and teach people who thought that they could just do anything they wanted here. But in the dream state, there's not that kind of strictures on you. So lucid dreaming has that kind of connotation nowadays. But nonetheless, it's a dream, and it's not real. So all of life is like that. So the seers want to go beyond waking and dreaming and pierce through, wake up from, and realize that they're the dreamer. You might have had dreams like that yourself, where you say, I'm dreaming, I think I'll wake up. Well, that's just a little precursor of, a kind of an awakening that will last for eternity. That's why I was chanting, what's outside is finite, is infinite, though it's finite by nature, and what's inside is infinite. So from the infinite, the finite has come. From you, all of this has come. You are infinite. And when you wake up and you draw that outside back into the inside, and you render them into one state, and you meditate in that state, and pass your time contentedly and be free, that's what Shankar was talking about when he talked about Jivan Mukta, the living liberated soul. We've seen enough of them even in modern times, like Ramana Maharshi and Swami Vivekananda and Sri Ramakrishna and so forth, to know that there are people who live in that state, the eternal moment, you can call it. It's not the past, nor is it the present, nor is it the future. It's an eternal moment where time stops. That's the master there is Lord Shiva. So in him we see that timeless state, eternally 16, teaching old graybeards and living in a cave, sometimes coming down off the mountain, and destroying all the worlds of name and form and time and space at the end of a long period of time called a yuga. I'll just dissolve them. And so you don't have to wait for Lord Shiva to do that, or for Armageddon, or for the end of the Kali Yuga. You can do it right now, evidently, if you become free, living liberated. So he's saying mental impulses get dissolved without residue by means of the cloud of virtues. Cloud of virtues are not the usual virtues you hear about in fundamentalist Christianity, for instance, or dualistic Christianity here, or in Hinduism, or in conventional Judaism, and so forth. You have to realize that when you say thou shalt not kill, that's a moral law. But when you hear thou cannot kill, it's not possible to kill anything because nothing was ever born, everything is infinite. And then you're talking about non-origination. Non-origination means nothing ever had any beginning and it will never experience an end. It's just going on and on and on. Now, when you find that out, you have to decide whether you want to go on and on spinning, or you want to go on and on witnessing that which is spinning. If you want off cycles, like Lord Buddha wanted off cycles, and he found his way out. He said, "Oh, architect of Maya, I have seen you. Now that I've seen you, I will not build any more homes. I won't build homes of wood. I won't build homes of stone. I won't build homes of flesh and bone. And I won't build homes of wise conception." So he's listing, as it were, from the ground up, all these homes we build. But I just chanted, "Have thou no home. What home can hold thee, friend? Sky thy roof, the grass thy bed, food what chance may bring." Which is Swami Vivekananda. And I can go back 2,000 years to Lord Jesus and cite you his parables and his slokas on giving up the world and renouncing. And they're just as powerful now as they were then, maybe more so, when attachment has increased exponentially over these last 2,000 years. So if you know about non-origination, that there's no birth, there's no death, that's called Adhyatma. And we often even sing about that whenever we get the chance. Namrichur na shanka, name jati beda, pita naiva me naiva matama janma, chidananda rupa, shivoham shivoham. Namrichur, I have no death. No shanka. Name jati beda, because I never had a birth. Jati. I'm not jati, I'm not a caste, I'm not a race. I'm not an individual of a race. I'm not an animal that evolved. I have no father and I have no mother. Just like have no home. These things are projections of yours, and you don't let projections rule you. Your own projections rule you. You're like that wizard who lost his wand after getting lost in his own world. And that world is a dream world, and it looks nice from the outside, as we know. But you get into it and you find out that it's got hundreds and thousands of problems in it. Call them challenges if you will, and be a warrior. Good luck with that. Because when the old warrior, who's managed to keep himself alive in that whirl of Maya, one day drops his sword and walks out of the battlefield and sits on the top of the hill, and his only interest left is just to watch the battle and see who wins this time around. The good or the evil, or which side. So at that point then, the witness consciousness kicks in and you want to detach. all of this preamble I'm giving you is a preamble to 2 charts about renunciation and detachment I want to show you, so that maybe in the West we understand it, and maybe the householders will even begin to take it in, because does the monk really have anything left to detach from? It's the householders that are running the risk of sense objects, you see, and having homes and having children and having wives and having all these problems. What to speak of everyone's problem: birth, death, growth, disease, old age, decay. 6 transformations are called, which everyone will have to face off with sometime or another in this 60, 80, 100-year lifetime span they're living. So all of that considered by the rational and sensitive mind, then steps are to be taken. Those steps are to be taken are to imbibe the cloud of virtues. So I was saying, it's not just thou shalt not kill, but you realize thou cannot kill. Nam Rityur Nashanka. There's nothing ever born, so nothing will ever die. It's all a projection. This is beginning to take some of the emotionalism out of the picture, you see, which is so clouding. We have a teaching in both Zen Buddhism and in Vedanta about ashobha, non-emotion. It's one of the things you want to strive for. And people who are lost in emotion and expressing emotion all the time, and they prefer emotional states, they're not going to understand that or seek it. But the person who's beginning to detach from the world of good, bad, and mixed occurrences, and from with the knowledge that this is all projected by the collective mind, which was then projected by the Trinity, the cosmic mind. And now here you are, an individual mind in the midst of it. When you put this all together, and you have the right philosophy in place, right orientation, as Lord Buddha said, then you're going to want to lift off of that and tuck it all back in, where it came from. Interesting thing in teachings of Vedavyas and Father of Yoga, Patanjali, and Lord Vashishta from very ancient times is that you can never, nothing's ever born and nothing ever dies, so you can't, for instance, destroy lust. So when they're saying here, dissolve all karmas without residue, you have to adopt a understanding of the art of transcendence. When you transcend, for instance, become a jivan mukta, there'll still be souls there suffering, right? Apparently so. And for that soul, he looks upon and says, shall I go back into it and help it, or should I just merge in Brahman? See, that's a jivan mukta as compared to a videha mukta. We'll look into this more at the Seattle retreat next weekend, which you're all invited to attend. So that from that station of transcendence is looking at that and decides whether or not he wants to enter into it or stay clear of it. A jivan mukta will enter into it, but they'll enter into it with this foreknowledge, like a conscious birth. See, they're coming out of a conscious death and probably a life of spiritual discipline to bring them to the conscious death. And as we looked at the refinement process of consciousness chart yesterday, and so they arrive at this innate perfection. And then, shall I be an exemplar of that, or shall I, seeing all of this is unreal, just give it up and or should I get back into it and help as far as possible? So the rain cloud of virtues to them is knowledge that birth and death are all apparent and non-actual. So it's kind of a conundrum for them, going back and help a race whose suffering and evil is all projected and not real. We're trying to awaken people from something that's not actually real anyway, which is the difference between a jivan mukta and what Vivekananda called a fire-darting reformer. He saw a lot of the fire-darting reformers in his country who came from England and so forth, the priests, the Catholic priests and all. And even in his own society, Raman Roy and even Lord Buddha to an extent was looking for some kind of reform, but he wanted to leave that all alone. So what I'm saying here is that transcendence is an art you're going to have to look at, because when you destroy these impulses to enjoy and therefore get rid of suffering, because you've put those two together, you can't have one without the other, then you realize that lust, anger, greed, envy, pride, pride of caste, pride of lineage, all the things that are attached to the air balloon of your mind, you can never destroy them. Certainly they won't go away as long as you're in the body. And when you're in the subtle body, call it heaven if you will, they're still involved. You're still involved in them. You're just enjoying more in heaven than you were on earth, without, not so uninterrupted, you see, without residue. But there is a residue there in heaven, and it's what pulls you back to earth. That's the loop of your ancestors and you, constantly going on like that, which Lord Buddha wanted you to see and at least have the choice to detach from if you wanted to get enlightenment. So what I'm saying, I think, in effect here is that, like Sri Ramakrishna, some monk said, how can I get rid of lust? And he said, you can't get rid of it. It's a part of the projection, he meant. It's a part of the mind. It's always in the mind. And therefore, you should increase lust. And the monk says, well, how can I do that? Doesn't sound right. He says, turn it towards God, lust after God realization. And so every passion, he had that sort of tantric twist to his teachings. Both Holy Mother and Sri Ramakrishna had that tantric twist. So it was about sublimation. The whole thing was about sublimation, not fire-darting, reforming sin and resistance and, how they say, whereas Maida today, she bring that word to mind.
Repression.
Repression, thank you, yeah. It's not about repression. It's in Tantra, it's sublimation. It's pratipaksha bhavanam, watering the flowers and not the weeds, because you can't make the weeds go away by concentrating on them. Which is Christ said, resist not evil. You don't concentrate on evil and give it more power, because pretty soon you'll have an incarnate devil as a part of your philosophy, and that's nonsense. That's superstition. Have you ever seen one? If there is a devil, and your name's Jones, it's in Miss Jones. The devil's in Miss Jones. And you have to find it there and eradicate it. Well, eradicate it back to the point that I'm laboring on here and not satisfying myself enough in the explanation of, is that you have to put all these back to the source they came from. That's going to be the mind and nature. You have to give it all back to where it appeared to originate from. You can't destroy it. So don't fall into that misconception. You'll never destroy the ego. You have to ripen it. And once it's ripe, it becomes transparent and it gets out of the way and you can see yourself. That's the small self must be dissolved into the big self, the great self, Atman. So ego gets dissolved in that way. And that's a kind of transcendence that takes you up and off of the collective mind, and then it puts you at the doorstep of the Trinity, the cosmic mind, the Son of the Father, if you want to put it that way. And there you ask, Lord, can I either stay with you, or is there something beyond you? Because I don't want to go back to that mess. It's cycling constantly, and there's no cure for it. No cure for projection, except to realize that you're the projector. So when you realize that you're part in the cosmic play, then you want to dump all that. So you just cut off the sandbags off the air balloon and be free, and soar into the heights of awareness, you see, as the song sings. Mother Kali is flying mind kites in the bazaar of mundane human existence. There are people who sang songs like this, you see. Mother Kali is flying mind kites in the bazaar of mundane human existence. Every once in a while, one of those strings snaps, and the one balloon floats off into the sky of awareness, free, and she dances and claps her hands, and she continues to hold these ones who are caught in the projection. They think that there's something to gain from mental projection, sort of like watching a movie. It's all a projection on a screen, see, but the screen doesn't change, and the movie doesn't do anything to you, except make you cry or laugh, as the case may be. So you walk out of the theater and you're not carrying the movie with you, or the screen with you. You just leave it behind. You transcend it. So these are, facts from the notebook of the Jivan Mukta. There's the notes he wrote down as he went along, that he took. So some seers don't take notes. They don't write a scripture. They don't leave behind any books. They just sip that nectar and they're out of here. And coming back, well, I'll leave that for Mother to decide. It's her decision, not mine. So others will take notes. Those are called revealed scriptures in India. And there's part and parcel there with the Dharma. The beauty about India's revealed scriptures is they don't contradict each other. And there's so many systems in India. It's not just one religion. There's like all these darshanas, the Orthodox and non-Orthodox. There's different religions like Sikhism, Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism, the Vedanta schools, yoga. I mean, there they are, just because India only wanted God, you see. It was the manifestation of the expression of Jesus as saying, you love God first and foremost. That's India he's talking about. He probably went there and saw that was the case. So, in that sweep of scripture, there's just an overall concurrence, you see. We agree with one another. And so we support each other. If Lord Kapila had the Samkhya system and we bring it forward, and we bring it forward to yoga, and we bring it forward to Buddhism, and we bring it forward to Shaivism, and we bring it forward to Vedanta, it's absorbed into this overall notebook of the Jivan Mukta, the realized soul, everything that has been written down, and can be passed on to even a culture like this, which is thoroughly materialistic. I'm quoting Vivekananda. Where wealth rolls in waves, he's talking about America, and where they're very generous, but the only problem is that their only God is the dollar bill. Those ideas came from Swamiji in 1893. People picked up on them and said, oh, guess what? But he was the first to come from great India. He was the harbinger, and he was the authentic. If you want to know India, and if you want to realize the Dharma and get enlightened, go back to Vivekananda. And when you go back to Vivekananda, what will he say? Go back to the Upanishads, which is what we're studying today, so maybe I should start studying it with you. Somebody in the audience goes, oh, we're starting? Heaps of karma get destroyed, and then this beautiful light shines forth immediately. So the Upanishad wants you to know that beyond these curtains that you yourself have lowered, when you raise them again, you'll see that light. It's that simple. It's a matter of, that's revelation. It's just lifting up the own curtains that you drew down, and just like you do coming out of deep sleep into waking. So that light shines forth immediately, unobstructed, and what it yields is spontaneous awareness. It sounds like Buddhism, doesn't it? But this was way back before Lord Buddha. So that idea of spontaneous awareness just dawns on you quickly. This great light. And now all that's left for you to do is realize I am the light, which is what Jesus said when he came out of the wilderness. It's what Muhammad said when he came off the mountain. What Moses said when he, after he parted the ocean, or before maybe. So, that shines unobstructed, before it was obstructed. So, te dhyan yoga nugata pasyan devatma shaktim sugunayar nagudam. We practice the art of meditation, said the ancient Indians, the Vedicists, and prior to the Vedas even. And when we practiced it, we saw there was a divine energy in everything. In our meditations, we saw the Devatma Shaktim. Devatma, the divine, the goddess, Shakti, in everything. And she had been indiscernible earlier because of the limitations of our own intellect. But when we meditated, we shed the limitations of our intellect, and she shone forth. So It's right out of the Upanishads. Te dhyan yoga nagato passion. So through the yoga of meditation, when your mind is set right, then you'll see this light shine forth at times, and one time it'll shine forth and stay. You see, you'll decide not to bring the curtain back. That curtain that's consisting of doubt and fear, and brooding and karma and mental impressions, impulses, desires, enjoyment, suffering, because some people prefer to suffer more than they prefer to enjoy. I was talking to a person just the other day who was suffering so much. He wrote me an email recently, said, "Still living in hell." That was the title of it. He's still living in hell. And so I began to wonder sometimes people don't just prefer that. And that is shobha, that is emotionalism. It's like they have no other recourse but to cling to their own drama. So we put out a bumper sticker said, "I said dharma, not drama." See? Let's go to the dharma because that'll make you peaceful again. And that's really what you want. You need peace of mind first and foremost. Holy Mother Sri Sharda Devi said that. You need peace of mind first and foremost. So if you lose that, then something has gone wrong. You need to go back and backtrack. You see, life is all about backtracking, particularly in this country if you're looking for spirituality. So that's why we go to other countries, because we're not finding it here. Even the religion we find here is questionable. What to speak of spirituality? So let's take a new sloka, that would be 41. The non-occurrence of the impulse to enjoy with regard to the objects of enjoyment marks the acme of detachment. The highest pitch of awareness is marked by this non-occurrence of the ego's pastime. The ego's pastime is the desire to enjoy. And then suffering comes, it's caught off guard. Where did that come from? I was enjoying so nicely, you see. But the pleasure and pain, life and death, good and bad, virtue and vice, you can't have one without the other. Brahmanandam paramasukudam kevalam jnanamurtim dvaitisam gaganasadrisham tattvama sharilaksham ekam nityam vimalamachalam sarvadi sakshibhutam, the witness, you see. Bhavatitam trigunarahitam sadgurum tan namami. I salute the Guru. So basically we salute the leader of our souls, through whose grace our ignorance is dispelled, who is beyond good and bad, pleasure and pain, life and death, virtue and vice, and all pairs of opposites. So the ego's pastime is pairs of opposites. The mind's pastime is divisiveness, dividing. And the more the mind divides, the more it gets attached to vaichitra, varieties. And the more varieties are there that the mind's running towards, the more God recedes into the background of your consciousness. That very consciousness which you are covering yourself with varieties, with dualities. But we sang yesterday, you see. Remember we sang that? Tani vinati raghunandana se. Oh, Ram, please help my mind quit perceiving duality. Reveal to me only the non-dual. And then you'll take my mind to the transcendent realm of pure awareness, like a bird, taking refuge at thy feet, released from a cage. It's a beautiful song that Tulsidas wrote. So, in the meantime, marked by attachment, see. So we should look at maybe some teachings from a chart that relating to this verse. I'll read it again. The non-occurrence of impulse to enjoy, with regard to the objects of enjoyment, marks the acme of detachment. The highest pitch of awareness is marked by this non-occurrence of the ego's pastime. Really beautifully taken the Sanskrit here and put it into a kind of English that is rather unusual. Instead of saying, give that, I was talking about the non-occurrence, you see, of things. And putting it in such terms that it strikes the mind that way. Well, this is a simple chart, but it's basically from the Jivan Mukti Viveka. It's a scripture that's not supposed to be shared with the householders. It's only for monks. But here I am, rebel that I am, wanting to give it to these advanced householders, if that's what you think of yourself as. If you have houses and children and jobs and so forth, basically the general epithet there would be a householder, and instead of a monk, say for instance, one who would renounce both externally and internally. And you've taken it on, you see. But as you take it on as a householder, you're supposed to renounce it internally. You're supposed to know that none of this is real, and you just walk amongst children and money and objects and keep your original state of purity. The duck is in the water, but the water should never get in the duck, as Sri Krishna said. So you're in the world, the water of the world, but don't let that get into you. See? The boat should be in the water shouldn't get in the boat. You see, you have many ways of saying it very simply. This is also rather simple, because the Jivan Mukti Viveka, if you've studied it, probably haven't, because like I say, it's really made available mostly to very advanced practitioners. Still, nevertheless, has some beautiful teachings on renunciation that could apply to what Sri Ramakrishna liked to think of as a person who would renounce internally but go on working in the world. The Jivan Mukta actually is kind of like that, because even though you won't see them probably occupied with job and children and things, money, nevertheless they did come back. They're living liberated. And there are a few of them amongst us. The yoga school would call that yogic householders. There are a few divine couples out there that you can go seek that aren't the mountain-dwelling, cave-dwelling kinds of yogis, and the very austere yogis, but there are some householder yogis too, and we'd like to bring more of those back and see them. So we're experimenting with that and seeing what happens. So here's a quote from the Jivan Mukti Viveka. Renounce first the desire for enjoyment. It's right in lines with this sloka, you see. Then the inner mental desires that foster it. Outer first, inner next, see. If you could jump to the inner and renounce there, the outer would follow, but most people aren't ready to do that yet. So they have to prove it to itself. It's like saying, philosophically, the object isn't real. So, but I'm still attached to it, you see. I've heard the truth, but I can't give it up. So then you're going to have to give it up externally before you can get to the truth that the object is really in your mind. It's not out here. The world is in your mind. It's not out here. The world is not a place in time. It's not a location. It's in the mind. We are right now in the mind, folks. This is the mind's expression. And so all worlds are in the mind. All hopes, all fears, all pleasures, all pains, all manifestations and expressions, all objects are in the mind. That's where all of this came from. That's why I chanted those two chants. Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, Purnat Purnamadachate. If you see the external, it's finite, right? It's also infinite. But the internal is infinite too. And from the internal, the external has come. From the infinite, the finite has come. So being infinite, nothing but infinite remains. So out here is infinite also. But this is the changing infinite, and inside would be the unchanging infinite. If you jump a step or two, like beyond dreaming to deep sleep, you'll find the unchanging infinite. All the seeds that are laying there, waiting for your mind to water them with rajas, tamas, and sattva, and produce worlds, you see. And it's up to you to do that or not. You can dissolve it all without residue, if you wish. Just take to the cloud of virtues. Practice that daily. A Dharma teacher would have to do that in order to be a true Dharma teacher. So just the mind is 24/7 in the Dharma. Even in sleep is in the Dharma. So the dreams have been transformed. My teacher used to say, quote that song, "A man has come to me from a land that never sleeps." Now, all my dreams have become radiant meditations. So you saw your teacher do it, you followed, you did it, and then you see this apparent transformation of consciousness going on, of the mind, that just lifts off of all its old problems, casts off all its old weights, and dispenses with all the unnecessary, the unreal, and trims it down to where only the real is standing there, and you look at it and you say, hey, that looks strangely like myself. Like Swami Vivekananda said, I'm an Advaitist. I see nothing else around but myself. I am God. And I don't rely on any other God other than the self. See? So that's the great self. That's Buddha nature. That's Atman. That's Busho. See? If you want to go to Zen. I didn't finish that, did I? Renounce first the desire for enjoyment, then the inner mental desires that foster it. Keep the purer desires, such as the desire for friendship. Sangha is friendship. I used to say, I'm not going to get through this quote ever, but I used to say, this is your blood, this is your non-karma family right here you're sitting with. I hope you won't create any unnecessary karmas with them. But your blood family is your karma family. That's who you've got associations with. That's who you were born with. And that's why the ancestors are such a risky business. And family is as Sri Ramakrishna said, the world's a deep pit and your family are vipers inside. It's just like Jesus. Those who hate their life those who love their life will get it again in eternity. It's those who hate their life, will reach that eternal life. If you love your life, then you'll become attached to family and ancestors and rounds of projectionism, thinking it's all well and good till you die, and then find yourself in heaven, and you're thinking that's well and good, and then the brick on your tail called karma pulls you out of heaven, and you find yourself in the womb again. And that goes on, unbeknownst to you in most cases. Nobody knows. They're asking, where did I come from? Who am I? And, questions like that. And actually, it would be nice if they did ask questions like that. Who am I? But don't ask what, where, when, and why, because that's time, space, name and form, and causality. Ask who, and then pretty soon you're getting back to this true I, which Vivekananda called the true ego. You see, we want to be the real individual, not this ego individual that has control of everything. We want to realize our Purusha, our true individuality, because that's how we identify with Brahman eventually. So, keep the desire for friendship, and I would say that's Sangha. That's a new family you find, a religious family, a spiritual family, and try and help them and benefit by their company. Then practice giving up even that, and seek knowledge alone. Finally, giving up even the desire for knowledge, abide in what remains, and give that up by the means which you renounce. In other words, you can deny the existence of everything, but you can never deny the existence of the one who's doing the denying. You see? Swami Sheshananda used to say that. You can deny everything, like jnanam, like shunyata, like neti neti, and so forth, and just end up with this knowledge, but you can never deny the existence of the one who's doing the denying. That's you. And why are you doing the denying? You must want to divest yourself of these objects that you projected, which you realized eventually were weights on you, were sandbags on you, because they gave rise to other unhealthy things. Very, very rare, Buddha says, the person who can move amongst the sense objects without getting attached to them. Father of Yoga followed up on that saying in the Dhammapada, and it helped him formulate some of his Yoga Sutras. Very rare is that person who can move among the sense objects without getting attached to them. But that's what you're going to want to do. If you're not a monk, or if you're a monk, then won't be much around you to get attached to. Well, that very chart is pretty much put here out of the Viveka. You see it there. Number 1, give up base desires for sense objects. That's Vishaya vasana. Vasana is the word for desire in Sanskrit. 2, manasavasana. Give up the internal desires of manas. What's manas?
Dual mind.
The mind. The dual mind. Yes, give up desires for that. So renounce the desire outwardly first, practice some renunciation, divest yourself of some objects. You don't have to go into a cave if you're a householder, but you need to maybe do a rummage sale or something. Whatever you call it in the Western households, do some spring cleaning. But then there's going to be some spring cleaning of the mind you have to do, because you're going to realize that the objects are collecting to you because you think about them. In other words, you can trace them right back to your thoughts, isn't it? Not just philosophically. You think something, you say, I'm going to go out and get it, and you bring it home. Right? Pretty soon you've got 4 TVs in the house, and they're all blaring away. The kids are hypnotized by them. And the mind is just scattered amongst different things. Varieties again. And you've lost that oneness out of which you fell because your thought wandered. See, it desired. So it's just a very simple teaching, and it's been said in many ways, but to bring it out from a level of Jivan Mukta, from the way the higher souls would see it, to them it's no problem to give up things. So if you see one of them, it helps you. Oh, they make it look so easy. So it is easy. So you can always get it back if you need it. And want and need being 2 different things, of course. So Vishaya, vasana, Vishaya really has to do with the senses, and then Manasana has to do with the mind. 3, Pranaya vasana. Now I'll rhyme nicely. Give up social relations and cultivate knowledge alone. There's that stage where you will, like Krishna says in the Gita, you will quit frequenting the populated places. You'll quit frequenting them. I always tell a story about a student of mine who, and this has happened in several occasions, said, well, I'm really liking the Vedanta I'm studying, but my buddies are calling me up after work and still want me to come to the bar and drink every night. I said, well, sorry, that's gone for you. But they're getting angry that I'm not showing up. I said, well, that's because misery loves company. You need to show them by your withdrawal that that's not the kind of lifestyle that is productive to higher mind and enlightenment and intelligence and things that have a hard time finding nowadays in people. Talking about the weather, instead of people say, well, how's the weather there? And I said, well, the weather in my mind is good. See, there's no turmoil or storms in there. I don't care what happens out here. If I have peace of mind, I'm fine. You see, and the world can go to hell in a handbasket in that case. So give up social relations and cultivate knowledge alone. You'll have love of lonely study. Who said that? Sri Krishna said that in the Gita. Love of lonely study. And that's what the Avadhut had. And go into the woods and sit on a log and take a book with him. Fire of yoga, I said last night. Vivekananda made that quote. Here in the Himalayas, I'm so happy. All I need is this mountain to sit on, a scripture by my side, and the fire of yoga. That's all I need. And he said, I don't need the doctors for my diabetes. I don't need this and that. This is what I need. Fire of yoga. The body can drop right here in the snow, as far as I'm concerned, and I'll be fine. The weather inside is fine. Then there's Vidyavasana. Give up that knowledge and realize truth. I made that statement again out of the Gita yesterday at class, that Krishna tells Arjuna, seek knowledge, but knowledge should lead to truth. And then I add to that, if knowledge doesn't lead to truth, it's dangerous. If knowledge just sits in our mind of the intellectual, it's dangerous. The scientist, the politician, the militant, the knowledge of the power that exists in everything, that we call Shakti, that they're calling atomic particles and so forth. That very power is dangerous, and you start messing with it, it's called an occult power. an occult power. Now, occult powers aren't just levitating, as silly as that is, but it's dominance over others is one of the occult powers. So let's see, how can I do that? You see, some scientists had a discussion with my teacher, Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj, once, and the scientist said, "You see that car there in the driveway, Swami? If we could collect all the power from that car, the particles in that car, then we could blow up the world." And Swami Sheshananda said, "Why would you want to do that?" So it means, why would you even want to entertain the thought, right? Because then you're going to go out and get the object. See, it began in your mind. Now you're going to think about harming people, creating karma for yourself, doing violence. I thought ahimsa was the first principle of yoga. Not himsa, thou shalt not kill, again, So give up knowledge after you get it, and then realize the truth through it. That's the whole point of it. You see the object is called pratika first. It's the first stage of meditation, is to meditate on an object. And this is easy to meditate on because I've got all my charts here. But you meditate on an object. That's the whole idea behind watching that flower bloom. You see, the object sitting and watching the Brahmayakita and the cockroach. You see. They got together one day and they never separated. They never moved. For days he watched them. They didn't move. One time he lied down, took a little rest, and got back up. They're gone. See? So he saluted the Brahmayakita and said, "You're my teacher of concentration. You didn't move. You became one with the object. Didn't move." So you meditate on the object. And if you meditate on the object and get the knowledge of the object, you find out, my God, there's lots of power in it. And if that stays at that level, you're going to go seek that power, and then you're a danger to everyone around you. You're even a danger if you seek that power just for intellectual satisfaction and don't act on it. See, then you teach your kids lower knowledge, and they never get the higher knowledge. The Dharma is like unknown to them, to us. So then we have to go back and learn the knowledge. And as we learn the knowledge, it destroys ignorance. Nahi gyanena sadrishyam bhavitam iha vidyate, right? Krishna says in the Gita, that the greatest purifier in all the world, Arjuna, is knowledge. It's the only thing that will destroy ignorance. Unless you are an advanced soul. But then you probably don't have much ignorance if you're an advanced soul. You can meditate and get rid of subtle karmas. You can dance and sing in ecstasy if it's real and authentic and transcend subtle karmas. But along the way, it's knowledge. It has to be knowledge. So that knowledge, you're going to have to make sure that it culminates in the Dharma, a higher wisdom. Aparavidya, paravidya. See, those are aparavidya is science and math and so forth, arts and sciences. But then the paravidya is knowledge of the self, the true self. That's what you're seeking. So it would have everything that, from authentic religion on up to the Dharma and on up to transcendence and so forth, the art of transcendence. Those things. Make sure that you seek them. And so, to summate it down here, I put together a quote myself. Raising an opposite wave in the mind, called pratipaksha bhavanam, nice long Sanskrit word there, is a much overlooked and underestimated method of spiritual practice. It is the simple way of watering the flowers and not the weeds. Here, the aspirant does not strive to root out desires, to squelch emotions, to destroy passions, or force austerities. Instead, he slowly transforms the mind by fixing it on the Dharma and its teachings alone. It's like maybe the best of Jnanam and Dhyanam, the best of Bhakti and Jnanam. That you take that tantric element of sublimation and you put it together with the study that you're doing. And just watch how quick the weeds go away. See? You don't give attention to something, it tends to go away, right? like that cat that's rubbing your leg, or that precocious child. Like, go away, kid. You bother me, as W.C. Fields said. Of course, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have higher quality of consciousness and spend time with our children. But when you're doing your retreat and your meditation, children should be shut out. They should not be allowed to bother you, because that's your problem. It's distraction. Catering to every little whim of some errant child that was born to you because you didn't the parents didn't teach you the Dharma and you didn't teach the Dharma to your kid. Then it's all a botheration. That's why people are unhappy. But if you feed the mind with higher Dharma, with teachings and all that, people have a focus all of a sudden. They won't even notice the botherations of life around them. They don't brood anymore. They're not bored. But it takes a little imbibing, digesting and so forth. You have to give it some time in you, just like meditation. So here the aspirant does not strive to root out desires, squelch emotions, destroy passions, or force austerities. All four of those things are needful, though. It's not like you can give them up and just jump to some magic transcendence. You're going to have to do austerities. You're going to have to squelch those emotions that are invasive. But as I was just saying, remember, you're taking these back to the source. You're drowning them in the source. It's like melting an ice cube in an ocean. It's back to its source. It's not something that you can destroy outright. There's a beautiful teaching by Sri Ramakrishna about that. He said, burnt ropes don't bind you anymore. But blow on them and, they disintegrate. He's talking about very subtle things there. He's talking about desires and objects for desires that were once in you that you burnt. But you still have a trace of them in your mind. You still think about them. People think that, I'm not enlightened because I still think about objects. But you still have a mind. It's not possible not to think about objects. In fact, in meditation, that's very difficult, isn't it? They say, do away with the object, and then in the mind, do away with the mental object. You might as well be talking about meditation here that doesn't think anymore. See? Like I used to say, make up your mind, world. What do you want me to do? Talk about your family that's vipers inside a hole of the world. First they tell you, get busy and think. So your dad tells you, why don't you do some thinking? Think about that. So you think about it, you go to school and you get your thinking together, and then you go to a Zen monastery and say, would you quit thinking? Say, why are you thinking so much? It's an unfair world out there. So all of this teaching is from the Jivan Mukti Viveka really still has, to me, a flavor of Tantra in it. Like you could never separate the river of Tantra from the river of the Vedas. They were like two streams flowing next to each other the whole time, and they mingle their waters. And those ones who are observing the two rivers and meditating on them, they know how to use that mingling of knowledge to their advantage. And they will actually write scriptures that will help you to do such things. Let's go on. I don't know how much time in this half, but we will have enough time to look at Shiva in his form as Vivekananda in this day and age. I was saying yesterday, I gave you a quick look at that, and when I look at that, I see the destruction of the world. Shiva has come to destroy everything, and in the finest, most beautiful way. This is the young, probably in his 20s, early picture of Swami Vivekananda, and you look at that and you see the very epitome of the description or the title of this chart, Vairagya. Dispassion, or if you would prefer, detachment, or discernment even. Those are 3D words that apply to the word Vairagya pretty well. And we should look at this so that we'll finish up this sloka, examining the sloka the way I like to take slokas apart for you. So, the Tejabindu Upanishad says, sages reach the inaccessible, making it accessible via the three gates of Vairagya, Utsaha, and Guru Bhakti. Vairagya is dispassion, withdrawal from things, and utsaha is enthusiasm for that. You can't do it like with morosity and say, oh, I have to do this, it's a drag. You do it with enthusiasm, because behind this variety of things is emptiness, and then behind the emptiness is fullness. So you're going through 3 stages. And then Guru Bhakti is, of course, devotion to your teacher, service and devotion to the teacher. So those 2 things are made, the inaccessible is made accessible. Somebody was talking to me just here in the room when we were having a private interview about serving, Mahat Seva, serving the great ones. And when you have authentic gurus, it's really quite easy, because you marvel at them. But the West hasn't seen a lot of authentic gurus. The ones we have seen are back in 1893, for instance. And the authentic Dharma teachers don't have large followings, because there's not a lot of people there to sit like this and learn it and imbibe it, get the transmission, as our founder Lex Sixon used to say. So Dharma teachers have small followings. Even Swami Sheshananda Ji Maharaj, my teacher here in Portland, I learned from quite a bit. There was only 20 people in the weekend sitting there, and he was the last living disciple of Sri Sharda Devi, last living monastic disciple. So when he gave a special holy day, then you'd have 50 or 60 come, and you realize that there are people around the world that really valued this man and saw him as an authentic authority. In Oregon there were some very, very spurious and dangerous teachers at the time. I won't mention any names. But Swami Sheshananda never said a thing about it. One day he said, after a bomb threat at his ashram, caused by these spurious teachers nearby, someone lumped some all Hindu groups into this, this mold, and so we had to vacate the house, and the police searched it, and there was no bomb. But after that, we got back together, and one of the first things he says was, well, if you seek peace, you get God. If you seek power, you get Rolls Royces. So we kind of knew what he was talking about. Like I said, not mentioning any names here. So he went on teaching the Dharma, and the Dharma only. And he represented the truth. He was an example of a person who knowledge just didn't sit around in him. He used it to get free. Jivan Mukta, which is the name of my retreat in Seattle next weekend. Advaita Vedanta in a Jivan Mukta, because I saw that in him. I saw the non-dual state in this living liberated soul, who was a monk for 70 years of his life, and who gave 45 years of it to the West without ever going back to India. He lived amongst us. I mean, this was a man who didn't just live amongst us for a little while. He set up house and kept it open for decades, and slept with us, ate with us, walked with us, talked with us, and scared the bejesus out of us every day with scoldings. It's like a really good disciplinary father, if you needed it, and the West needs it. Mm-hmm. Children need to be disciplined. If we had discipline in place, not necessarily the rod type of discipline, although that's not discounted completely, but if we had that kind of discipline in place, then all the problems we're seeing in generations that are following us would be gone. And so would the medicines being used to treat them that they're inventing to make money. This good old discipline there's just nothing to replace it. But it has to be discipline in the Dharma. It has to be with those Dharmic principles. Morals and ethics aren't cutting it. They're rebelling against those. But if you give them this new Dharma and try and interest the youth, they'll respond. What's that? Did I miss something? So there's some inherent intelligence still there in them. Serving the Guru and the spiritual cause with great enthusiasm, they learn the meaning of dispassion and attain supreme detachment. Well, this is supreme detachment here, Paravairagya. But let's go through these before the break. Down here in white, Yatamana is the first. You might recognize some of these as we go along. In fact, it is put in an order, in a numerical order, but you may actually have something at a very high level and then find yourself one day revisiting lower levels. It's not all cut and dried and black and white, as they say, but you have to know that this is a general march, refinement of consciousness inside. In fact, all these first 8 are called lower detachment. India usually puts these kinds of numbered systems in Mridu, Madhya, and Para. See, Mridu means weak. So if you have any good quality, you might have it in a weak way. You have a little of it. Mridu really is like the deer, Like Mridu Mudra is this in puja, as what's there is in here, they say. And came out of here. It's just a hand sign without words saying Purnamadaha, Purnamidam, really. From the internal, the external has come. If you look at the altar and do it, say, all those divinities there are in me. I'm right now just practicing Gauna Bhakti. I'm thinking they're in the altar. And if that persists, that knowledge persists and gets risky, what's the danger? Pretty soon you've got idol worship that you're idly worshipping. So you need to take that deeper, that those beings are actually in me. Would give you bliss, that's Raga Bhakti. And then Prema Bhakti is just, you don't need altars. Everywhere is the altar to you. You're worshipping everything. Like Sri Ramakrishna said, why don't you worship the flowering tree outside the temple? You walk by the flowering tree and go into the temple and they're offering flowers and so forth, but why discount the flowering tree? That's God too. So you start to see God in everything. But you do have to start with Gauna Bhakti. So I'm saying Mridu is weak, Madhya is middling, and Para is supreme. So let's look at these weak to middling. Yatamana means initial detachment of a beginning aspirant who, having come to know that the body and senses require purification, attempts to bring them under control. When I put Swamiji's image behind this old chart, this is V37, bingo. See, it's V37, so I've got about 200 of these Vedantic charts and a number of other charts. So this is a very early chart. So when just recently I put this image behind it and fixed the text so it would show up. So when I did, so this is a very old chart that you've seen before, but I've added to these definitions too, so that they're fattened up a bit and you can understand. So the body and senses require purification and you attempt to bring them under control. It's your early efforts. And then you get to Mridu Vairagya, mild detachment which is intermittent, vague and weak, and which easily falls victim to compromise and distraction. Madhya Vairagya, middling type of detachment, lacking in intensity, which nevertheless rises up sporadically, at times with intensity, but soon dies away. So Sri Ramakrishna, as an example of that kind of vairagya or dispassion, said there was a man who told his family, I'm going to renounce the world. I'm going to Varanasi and give it all up. See, I'll become a monk in Varanasi. So he did, he went, under the pitch of this intensity that was soon to die away. When he got there, then they waited to hear from him, and pretty soon a note came back. I got a really good job here. See, and there's a woman working there I'm interested in. See. So all his dispassion and detachment just like that, down the drain. He went there to become realized and enlightened. He got involved in the world again. So whatever the case may be with him, that's a good example of intermittent, running hot, running cold, they say, kind of detachment. Number 4 is karana vairagya, detachment caused by the arising of various difficulties of life mixed with ever-interrupted pleasures. Yeah, you can, if you're a young aspirant, you can see these in yourself, and you can probably see them by now in your mind, right? Not just outside. You're beginning to trace into your mind, so don't get discouraged. you've made that step. You're in the mental renunciation phase. You just have to bring it off. Uparma vairagya, detachment which arises from satiety of desires and disenchantment with work. So now you're actually getting somewhere. Swami Vivekananda used to say, all work, duty, is the burning midday sun that scorches the vitals of humanity. So there's people who have duties, and they're very dedicated to their duty. That's actually rather heroic. But it's the midday sun which scorches the vitals of humanity. When the call for God realization comes, they'll put aside God for their duties. There's a very good case of that when Christ was there and he said, come and follow me. And the man said, well, I will, Jesus, I will follow you. First I have to bury my dead father. Duty, right? So Jesus said, let the dead bury their dead. You come and proclaim eternal life with me. Give up the family. Funeral, what's that going to lead to? A wedding, burial, in debt so you can't leave, leaving your wife with a debt for the burial so you can't go with Jesus. You have the chance here to do it, and you blow it, basically, like the man who went to Varanasi. So you have to feel that call for giving up the world. And you can do it as a householder, and it's best to do it as a householder because you have more weights on you than the monk has. On the other hand, you have more to protect you than the monk does. You have a house, a refrigerator, people around you. Hopefully they're supporting you. So it's a good time to give up. Give all those things up, your refrigerator, your house, and your children, and your job, and you can still do them. But you've given them up now. They're not holding you anymore, you see. And you're free, and you become a much better worker, much better father, much better mother, and so forth. So it's you're in the mind here, right? Like we have to flip it back again. You're not at the level of the object anymore. You're in the level of making connection of the object to the mind. That's prana that you've gotten under control. That's life force. Man does not live by bread alone. You live by this life force. So when you connect that life force from the external world to the mind, that's called manaha prana sambandha. Beautiful Sanskrit word, connecting the body and senses via the prana to the illumined mind. We have a whole chart on that, which is very beautiful, with Swamiji's picture in it again. One of them. Anasakti is next. The beginning of actual detachment, which represents the early stage of non-attachment. You see how they're grading it very carefully. And you probably, as a map or a guide, you can look at these and say, well, I'm there, but maybe sometimes I fall down there. Then a better mode comes upon me, and then all of a sudden, actually, I'm sometimes over here, So you're bouncing around a little bit, but each time you're trying to gain ground in this art. This is a spiritual art, you see. People come to me and say, oh, I sure wish I had kept up my cello playing. I could play like you or something. Or I wish I had kept up that piano. But they didn't. They didn't practice it and concentrate on it. So now they have some remorse later about that. The same with spiritual life. The spiritual art that you practice and you attain. Once you attain it, it's yours. I haven't really practiced cello for years. I could still sit down and play the Bach suites for you. So, maybe not perfectly, but once it's in you, it's in you. So, you master it, and it becomes a part of you. That's a samskara in your mind. And you just read about that. When all the load of impulses, innate impulses, get dissolved, those are innate impulses. If I want to come back and be a fine cellist again next lifetime, then I'll stick with cello. But I don't. Been there, done that. The cello will come back with me. I won't come back to serve the cello. See? So I found a higher music than Bach and Beethoven and Brahms. It's called the Dharma. And I'm dancing to that tune because that's transformative. Music soothes the savage speech, but it doesn't transform the human mind. transforms it into an artist. Not a bad life, but ask me about some of the artists I know, what kind of people they are. I remember one famous pianist I had a discussion with, and I was leaving the symphony with my cello, and I saw him practicing, and I said, "Do you happen to have the time?" He said, "I'm busy. Go away." I've known some really fantastic players, really great violinists and pianists and other artists who have no maturity whatsoever in any other level of life. No maturity. Might as well be animals in every other level. And people can't stay with them, they can't have relationships with them and so forth. So being an artist, maybe we should try for a higher spiritual art. And so I'm beginning to detach from people like that, situations like that, places like that, because behind all of them is this great light called God or Brahman or Allah or Buddha nature, and I want that. That's the supreme attainment. You don't think it's there? Then zip your lips till you see it one day or one lifetime. I've seen it, so I can tell you about it, and that's why I'm sitting here day after day, week after week, month after month with my mind in the Dharma, so that I can somehow communicate that to everyone, so they will be enthused, utsaha. They will get some great enthusiasm about realizing it themselves in this very lifetime. They'll make a move on Maya. Maya is constantly making many moves on you, whether you know it or not. So you should make a move on Maya. That move should be to withdraw from it, to detach from it, to discern its existence, to give it up, to get distance from it. Because if you get into it, you don't have a chance. The soul does not have a chance caught in its own Maya. Sri Ramakrishna said something very beautiful. He said, even Brahman, when it takes a form, gets caught in its own Maya. Narada went to Vishnu and said, and Lakshmi was there, so Lakshmi went, in all her modesty, left, you see, the consort of Vishnu. And Narada said, why'd she leave? I'm pure. I don't have any thoughts. I'm free of Maya. And Vishnu said, don't ever say such a thing. We're all in Maya. So if Vishnu knows he's in Maya, that's the difference between him and us. He knows he's there, we don't. We don't even have a word for it in English, except maybe this sucks. Something like that. But there it is, impinging on you all the time, and you're in it like the fish with a net in its mouth, sunk in the mud, thinking it's free, Shri Ramakrishna said. So I'm just saying, as they say, zip your lips if you haven't seen that light. Once you see that light at the center of your being and you're sure of it, then make the move away from Maya towards Brahman, and you'll do it by dispassion, detachment. In stages is fine. Stages is the way to go. Enlightenment dawns on the mind in stages, said Sri Ram in the Adhyatma Ramayana. We're studying the Adhyatma Upanishad, by the way. Stula Vairagya means the fundamental or gross stage of authentic detachment, which is not yet fully matured. So now we've come upon an actual authentic detachment that's not going to run away on you. So you've arrived. You're saying to yourself, I'm never going to go back and lick up the spittle I spat out on the sidewalk a couple of minutes ago. Nice image, huh? There are people who actually do. I'm thirsty. I'll go back and lick up that spittle I spat out on the sidewalk a couple of minutes back. That's what taking back the world is to a person like this. They just wouldn't think about it. Been there, done that, they've gone beyond it, and they're just looking forward, or inward, as the case may be. And everything that they've renounced for sure. So it's not happening down here. You see, you're wobbling, you see, back and forth, like a nice big pile of spittle. You're wobbling. You see. So you need to get up here, and then you get to Vaishikara, a more mature state of detachment, sometimes called the highest state of lower dispassion. shift columns. Now we've gotten to the real level of detachment. Adimatra, a high state of detachment under the influence of which the pleasures of life seem insipid, even painful. Now you have people who will come and do this thing. It's so fun. Oh, no thanks. Right. Some people went with Swami Sheshanandaji Maharaj to, must have been Jansen Park or one of those places back then. With the big, Portland used to have the biggest roller coaster and all that. In high school we'd used to go and dare each other to go on that. We wouldn't do it. Then we'd come back later without our friends and try and go on it, so that they wouldn't see us back down if we chickened out. That park, if you're over 50 right now, you probably know what I mean. So Swami Sheshananda, some of his disciples took him there, and there were a couple of swamis with them from the order. They went, let's go on that roller coaster. And so once you do it, and so the other swamis said, okay, we'll come on it with you. But so Swami Sheshananda, they said, come on, Kiran Maharaj, come with us. And he said, no, I've spent my whole life getting off of rides like that. I'm not going on that thing, you see. So the swamis go, oh, that's Kiran Maharaj, so here, hold our coats. And they piled them with our coats, We'd want to go on that roller coaster in Portland anyway. It's like, better bundle up. So, you get off those rides. So you could call that old-fashioned or something, but he really meant it. He was done with the world, and he was an exemplar for others around him, and he was aware of being exemplar. So he had to show how giving up things. Pretty soon you lose your desire for it, and then it even becomes insipid thought to you to think about it. You don't want to do that anymore. It might bring back old memories. Let's finish this up before our break. Audasinya is a very lofty state of detachment brought about by jnanam, that's like dharma, which causes indifference to sense experiences and transcendence of all contrasting pairs of opposites. Now here's that up and out of good and bad, virtue and vice, pleasure and pain. It's not like I have to decide between the two, or just take one over the other, or take one over the other and try and avoid that second when it tries to come at me. People can skirt their karma for lifetimes and then all of a sudden live it in full. In a certain lifetime, that's what you see people getting into calamity. They've put their karma off for a long time, and it's coming back on them in a bitter way. So beyond that is audasinya. You don't even consider the dualities anymore. You're beyond them. You've detached successfully. And that's going to lead to tivra vairagya, the most intense form of detachment short of fully matured vairagya, where a very keen sense of natural abidance is felt. So you've found yourself back to the source of the roller coaster, you see. That person who stood there, looked at an open field, said, I could build a really nice ride there. I'll call it Jansen Park or something, you see. I'll give the roller coaster a name, the mighty Maya. See. I'll get on it and ride, and people will give me money. So be back at the very early source of that, just looking at that open field. You've arrived back at, why should I do anything? All of that is within me, and other people are dreaming it. I'm done with it. This thirst for life forever quench. It drags from birth to death, and death to birth the soul. He conquers all who conquers self. Know this and never yield. Say Om Tat Sat Om, as Vivekananda has written. So this thirst for life forever quench. Why? Because it drags from birth to death, and death to birth the soul. But they conquer all who conquer self. So you're talking about that with Tiva Vairagya, and also with Parama Vairagya. Absolute and supreme detachment which leaves the mind completely and permanently free of thoughts of worldly objects. I would say that really what that is that you're seeing God in everything. It's not that you're trying to be free of objects. The objects have become God. But you would have to have gone through all these stages to realize that. You can't just be down at this stage and say, all is God, I see nothing but God. It's just lip service. And you're falling and tripping every day on your own words. So if you actually have gone through the process and graduated the process and reached a full maturation, and this happens in all things, not just in the art of detachment. It also happens in meditation, it happens in the study of scriptures, that you go by stages in your mastery of the thing. That's the spiritual art. And certainly the Dharma plays the biggest part. Jnanam, as I said here. So think about that, at the break. And we'll take it into the next half, that basically it's not avoiding things anymore, or even looking at the contrast between good and bad or objects. It's not even thinking about objects. Why? Not because you forced it in meditations, because you don't see them anymore. You just see Brahman everywhere. Words can't do this description justice. You have to really have that experience and to know what it is. But they'll see flesh and bone bodies and objects made of 5 elements and other things like that. You'll still see them, but they're nothing but emanations from Brahman. They're not anymore actual in themselves. You really see that, the impermanence and everything. So we went through that. We'll take this last quote here at the beginning of the break. So let's take our break now for 15 minutes and we'll be back. We'll be back. now that we have all returned into this same ashram place of Dharma that we've been exuding out to everyone who is watching, and all of the 13 or 14 people here who have gathered, thank you very much for coming this weekend and to Sri Ramakrishna's birthday puja last night, where there were some 15 or 16 of us. So that's good numbers for a Dharma center. That is maybe in the 80s when Dharma was new and being brought, and myself and Lexington used to go sometimes to Tibetan Buddhist Dharma teachers and teachings and listen. It was kind of on the heyday then, and it was a fire that was burning. But that's kind of the problem Vivekananda noted with the Americans, which weren't there in the English people that he met. The Americans, he said, are like straw on fire. They flare up around a thing and then they burn out really quick, and they don't hold on to it and entertain it, and keep it, and maybe take it in stages and stick with it the rest of their life. They said you get an Englishman on board and he'll just stay doggedly, stoically, ruthlessly. It's priceless, but actually we're not priceless because price is here today. So those beings tend to stick with it, and in that way, it's a good example for us to adhere to these teachings and make them a part of our life. Just like food becomes a part of your very body, this Dharma food should become part of your mind, your thinking process, your intellect, and even your ego will begin to be satisfied by this subtler food. You might call it rocket fuel as compared to diesel gas for your vehicle. And we'll talk something about vehicles, and when we continue on with these slokas. We want to finish up this sloka which is sloka 41, about the acme of detachment. And we looked at the 4 stages of natural renunciation from the Jivan Mukta Viveka. That's really deep Dharma that you're getting. And then we looked here at the 12 stages of Vairagya, which is a teaching system in Vedanta. It's very Vedantic. And we were going to finish that up, and therefore segue into the rest of the class with this quote. Those who want to help mankind must take their own pleasure and pain, name and form, and all sorts of interests, and make a bundle of them and throw them into the sea. And then come to the Lord. As if you can't come to the Lord with all those things. We said yesterday, like John said, man, you cannot see God with these eyes. No man hath seen God with these eyes. So God's not here. Why? Because of all this bundle of stuff that you have, that you prefer to carry, and much of it of which is veiling your vision. If thine eye be single, kind of vision. So the Christ sayings are just so Vedantic and so Advaitic too, and they also appeal to and apply to our sadhana. He was an exemplar, not a savior, so he wanted us to practice. Cut yourself in the image. Be perfect as thy Father in heaven. And separate mother from father, and mother from daughter, and father from son, in order to get this essence of things. Hate your life, but love eternal life. All these teachings are very, very profound teachings, really, that fall into a scheme like these 12 levels of detachment. So, this is Vivekananda talking. I didn't think I have room for it all down there at the bottom, but it's there as his asana, you might say. And so he says, make all of this a bundle. What? Name, form, pleasure, pain, all sorts of interests, and throw them into the sea, then come to the Lord. This is what all the masters said and did. He's talking about spiritual masters. The fact is that the Lord is in us, we are He. The eternal subject, the real ego. I mentioned that in the first half. You often use that phrase. Never to be objectified, and that all this objectifying process is mere waste of time and talent. That's projection of worlds. We're mere waste of time and talent. When the soul becomes aware of this, it gives up objectifying, detaches, and falls back more and more upon the subjective. Until we are ready to sacrifice everything else to that one idea and to that one alone, we never, never will see the light. If you want to give up everything for your own salvation, that is nothing. But do you want to forego even your own salvation for the good of the world? If so, then stem the tide of degeneration at the sacrifice of name and form, wealth and enjoyments, nay, every hope for this or other worlds. So you'll find sentiments like that not only in his complete works, these speeches he gave that were written down so meticulously by stenographers and so forth, but you'll find this also in his Song of the Sannyasin. All hope and fear, as he says, say peace to all, from me no danger be to aught that lives. To those who dwell on high and those who lowly creep, I am the self in all. All life both here and there do I renounce. All heavens, all hells, all hopes and all fears, thus cut thy bonds. Look at him, memorize that sloka, and in that mesmerization that you have on a great soul, and you'll be dehypnotized from the world. And you'll be seeing the truth. You'll be embroiling yourself in the harbinger of Dharma in this age, the messenger, the Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna, his constitution wasn't that could travel very well, and he was always in a transcendent mode. They often thought, you look at him, you could hardly see his feet touch the ground. He was so light. But Swamiji was right there, and the messenger to come forth and give these kinds of teachings to us. And Holy Mother used to say, the real friend is the one who warns you in time. Fair weather friends or people with fair faces and false hearts, they'll just be your bar drinking buddies. See, like I said, right? And they'll say, oh, come out, you don't have to do that. What are you doing reading that? Why are you sitting still? Come on, be active. But your real friends will warn in time. And so there's your real friend. I just gave a series of classes in Hawaii, and some of you might have been looking live stream on the Eternal Companion, because it was his brother monk's birthday, Swami Brahmananda, known as Rakal in the Gospel of Ramakrishna. And so on his birthday, there's a book about him called The Eternal Companion. So we took that day to start the series of classes on what is the Eternal Companion. And we talked about basically 4 things that could be your eternal companion. There would be religion, if it were rightly taught, if the R was capitalized. And there was the Ishvara form, God with form, your Buddha, your Jesus, your Vishnu, your Shiva, and so forth. And there was your own self. And then there was Brahman. See? So it was hard for me to decide which one of those was really the eternal companion of today's person. Because Brahman's so far away, nobody even thinks about it anymore, what to speak of trying to reach it. Your Atman, yourself, is not known to you yet. If it were, you would probably not be sitting here listening to me. Or if you were, you'd be crying tears of joy. Religion, can hardly be your eternal companion nowadays. Not Christianity, not Judaism, not Hinduism. It's fallen so far from the goal. Over the long efflux of time, religion declines, Sri Krishna says, so I have to come back again and again to resurrect it. So we were looking at Ishvara, this hidden self within you, this inner ruler, immortal, seated in your heart. Antaryami, they call him, or her, if it's Divine Mother. And so we went through all 4 of those as the eternal companion. That's your real friend. So here is the manifestation of your true friend. The West finally has a patron saint, if you want to put it that way. I mean, he wasn't just a saint. He was more a seer, a yogi, a maharishi, a great soul. But there he is, and if you can't see that by looking at him and how serious he is about your welfare, then you need to read some of his sayings, you see, ponder them. them alone will be enough to take you to a high level of mind. He used to say, maybe well and good when I get out of my body, I'll feel so blissful. But I'll not stop striving. I'll come back and take 1,000 lifetimes if I can help just one person out of suffering. So what to speak of just a bodhisattva? And this is the highest level of bodhisattva. You know, there are 10 levels of bodhisattva taught in the tradition of Buddhism. 10 pure lands, they call them. And when you get your first conscious death and your first conscious life, you're a bodhisattva, you see. From then on you can come back, and if you come back, you perfect yourself in a whole new dimension. That would be perfecting the soul, if such a thing is possible. Or realizing subtler and subtler levels of your own soul, your own Buddha nature, what we call Atman, or Paramatman. So, to put him forth as the grand renunciate is kind of even an understatement. I mean, Shankara sings about those kinds of beings quite a lot. Jana Yonavagarvam Harati Nimasat Kalaha Sarvam Mayamidam Makilam Hitva Brahmapadam Tvam Pravisha Vidita Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Bhaja Govindam Mudamate Samprapte Sanihite Kali Nahi Nahi Rakshati Dukrin Karane, which means if I took it straight from the English translation, means the ascetic with matted locks and the one with the shaven head, the one with the hairs pulled out one by one, this is the one who disguises himself in ochre robes to deceive others. This one sees yet is blind and does all only for the sake of the belly. So this would be like the false renunciate, see. But if you want to hear a verse that has more about the true renunciate, then you would probably be singing something like this. Can we do it probably by memory? Satsangatve nisangatvam, nisangatve nirmohatvam, nirmohatve nishchalitatvam, nishchalitatve jivanamukti. Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam, Bhaja Govindam mudamate, samprapte sanihite kali, nahi nahi rakshati dukrin karine. Which would mean, to the company of the good arises non-attachment. Through non-attachment arises freedom from delusion. From freedom from delusion arises steadfastness, nishchala. And from steadfastness arises liberation in this life, jivan mukti. So this is how Shankara would sing back in 700 AD about these phases of renunciation, the false renunciation, the true renunciation, how to discriminate between the two, how to escape hypocrisy, like in religion and even in false dharma teachers, and to go to the original, the authentic, the harbinger, the one assigned and pointed to by the Divine Mother of the universe. That would be your soul, like Swami Vivekananda, who is much more than, say, just a renunciate, as I was saying. If you were to take it on another level, you would sing something like this, maybe. Yatinurushtava prananam dashyati prafulam satpadaha prasunam pravritim tavartam kokilo manogyam kujati vivekanandate prabhate pranjali narendra shashave narendra yovane narendra kridane narendra shikshane narendra palane narendra yarpane vivekanandate prabhate pranjali vivekanandate prabhate pranjali. And you would say, "Oh, Vivekananda, Grand Renunciate, Aruna, the Deva of dawn, who grants morning's first light, offers you his obeisances. All of nature vibrates with the thrill of new life and spontaneously sings your eternal praises. Like a blooming flower swarmed with bees, all beings are seeking refuge in thee, the perfect man. In this auspicious dawn of illumination, O Vivekananda, we offer you our abundant salutations." Vivekanandate prabhate pranjali. So that's how some 5 or 6 million people feel about him now. And quite a few of those are here in America because Sri Ramakrishna and Holy Mother are not quite discovered yet so much by Americans. But Vivekananda made a great impact on the whole world and came in 1893 to the Parliament of Religions and got all the thundering standing ovation applause within 4 words that he spoke. Brothers and sisters of America. And everyone started clapping. And it says he had been waiting his turn and he kept deferring to the next speaker. He didn't want to. And he said later, all the time I was just saying, to Divine Mother, I can't, how can I speak to these people? Who am I? What do I have to say? And then Divine Mother prompted him and he went up there and said, Sri Ramakrishna stood behind me and I spoke. And it was beautiful. And gave a series of lectures to him. That first one was very thrilling. So, are we straw on fire in terms of him? Some of us aren't. Some of us are still burning embers. And devout members of his family. And we want to continue that on, that tradition, and deepen it. That's what SRV has been born, Sharada Ramakrishna Vivekananda Association, to complement the RD fine order of Ramakrishna, which are monastic, basically. We want to have some householder voices in this and their participation. And like I said, they have the greater risk of objects, materialism, violence, power, domination. They have the greater risk because they haven't given those up. If they have, they still have to live amongst them. We might not like what our politics and our politicians are doing, but it doesn't mean that we can stem that tide by ourselves, unless, of course, we get transcendence. Grant unto Caesar what is Caesar's, take unto yourself what is the Lord's is a spiritual law written in granite of consciousness. So at the same time, then, you have some destiny or some yearning to help humanity, like he did, obviously, and the bodhisattvas do. Then you have to figure out a way to move amongst the objects of the senses without risking the dangers of contact with them and moving. The monk will do that in one way, and the rest of us have to do this in another. We do have the advantage of having our families and our houses and refrigerators behind us. You see, it's easy to get your food, but you shouldn't just become 3 meals a day person and just look for the next meal, and in between you're just frittering away your time. You use food you eat it, you bless it first. You make sure, Mother said, always bless your food. Anything that's taken in without blessing it is poison in your bloodstream. Doesn't matter if it's organic or inorganic, you see, or not organic, I mean. So you take it in, you bless it, you take it in, and then you do your practice, and that brings the energy up the spine. Not the physical spine. I mean, in a way, you'll get some good food energy from that and be healthy and all that's fine. But there's a subtle energy that's rising in you called Mother, Kundalini, see, Shakti, Adhyatma Shakti. That's rising in you if you take food and subject it to spiritual practice. So in between meals, you do your study of scriptures, you meditate, you do your devotions at the altar, and at work you serve all beings as if they were God. They're angels unawares. See, as Vivekananda wrote a poem called "Angels Unawares." Probably when he saw us. Look at what they've done, how they've mastered nature. They're great. I wish I could bring some of that back to India. He said, they're mere babies in spirituality, later he said, and they're attached to the dollar and to power. We got to give them the India Dharma. So it's kind of a mixture. I could bring some of that back to India to help it out of its poverty, but then I have to bring the Dharma from India to America to help them out of their spiritual poverty. And this is the task of a great soul like that, you see. We might as well be giving a class on Swami Vivekananda today, but with a few verses from these beautiful stotrams and bhajans, and you can see how deep other people feel about him. Not just the monks, but like I said, 5 or 6 million people now. So this is a beautiful excerpt from long talks he gave about the art of detachment and its efficacy amongst us. That was all coming, by the way, from our 41st sloka. So today and yesterday we've taken 3 slokas. Let's take 42. This acme of withdrawal is marked by the non-occurrence of even the latent impulse to enjoy. So what to speak of the obvious impulse to enjoy, the latent impulse to enjoy in your mind is now not occurring. See? That's why, like Swami Akhandananda, one of the other disciples of Ramakrishna, went to a village. The villagers watched him for years. He helped them. He brought the message of the master there and the Dharma and everything, and helped them on the physical level too. And the villagers all attested later that he only slept 2 hours out of 24. He was working constantly for 22 hours. So how do we explain that? So basically, he doesn't wasting his energy on enjoyments, or on where to get his next meal, or I'm hungry, or I'm too full, I've overeaten, I've got bad digestion. I mean, all the energy going to the body, right, and the organs, sense organs, because of sense objects that you haven't tempered your appetite for. So we at least need to moderate sexual activity too. It's not that we're all celibate, but we need to moderate that, and probably return to the sanctity of childbirth as we do, because they're just popping them out there. I don't know if you've noticed, and the quality of consciousness is, pardon me for saying, not that high. So you need to, like Vivekananda once said, my parents prayed for lifetimes to get me as their child. See? I mean, whether you believe in reincarnation or not, here's a soul who has experienced it and is telling you. And so he's got parents who are practicing spiritual austerities as laying the grounds for having a soul like this come into them, through them, see. So, and we have to think that there are souls out there looking at America and going, yee, where do I get born? What gate can I come through there? It's not pure, see, and I won't get the Dharma. And that's Maya I'm going into. I need the Dharma even if I'm realized. I mean, it took him like 20 years to work through Maya. When his father passed away and all their so-called friends betrayed the family and there was no money and nobody would help him, he ran to Ramakrishna. He arrived at Dakaneshwar with one shoe on. He lost one shoe along the way. and his hair tousled, because he wasn't sent here to have a job and support his parents. It wasn't his mission. So he had to go through this, and Ramakrishna, sent him to the Kali temple. Well, I can't help you, he said. I don't do anything. I don't ask God for anything. It's not my nature. You go and ask Mother Kali in the temple. So Naren, the young Vivekananda, goes to the temple, goes into the temple to pray for sustenance for his family, to return to basic food and clothing even. And so he comes up to the statue, and he doesn't believe in Mother Kali. He doesn't believe in deities. This is a very non-dual person. He's not into rituals and rites and things. So he comes up to the statue of Mother Kali, and he sees her as the living goddess. And he falls in awe and sits there. And then he finally gets up and kind of teeters out of the temple and goes back to Ramakrishna. And as soon as he goes in the room, Ramakrishna says, well, did you ask her for help for your family? And Naren goes, oh, no, I didn't. He said, you fool, go back there and ask him. Ask her for help. So Naren did that 3 times. Every time he went into the temple, he forgot entirely about the world and just saw the living mother in the statue. Chinmayi, the living consciousness. It wasn't Mrinmayi anymore. It wasn't just a statue that priests were bowing before and doing some ritual. He saw the result of the ritual in the spirit occupying this image. Sort of like you might look at a picture of your beloved ancestor and love it and revere it. In puja and ritual, then there's a consummate result of that worship that stores up, and you see it shining there. It's not the image itself; it's the image occupying. It's the consciousness occupying the image. That's why there are holy places that feel sacred and other holy places that don't, because the worldly place people have trodden on the so-called holy places that worship isn't being done properly, and worldliness is being brought into the picture. And then there's some really holy places that are actually emanating the spirit of Brahman. So anyway, he went back to Sri Ramakrishna, you see, and Sri Ramakrishna berated him again, you see. And Naren finally he was too smart for this. He says, I see this is all you're doing. You're making me see God. And Ramakrishna laughed. He said, okay, whatever, but here, don't worry, go home. Your family will have general food and clothing. It's settled. Mother Kali has obviously accepted because she showed herself to you, see. I don't do anything, she did it all. So that's how he didn't have to get a job or anything too. It was all a play for us. The whole thing that an avatar does, a great message like that, is a play for us. It's not that they don't feel our suffering and that all of that, is that they're just a shobha. They're beyond emotion, and they're beyond thinking the play of the world to be real. We take it so real and so seriously. Well, their seriousness, and you can see it in his face, is why did you fall into this haze of suffering and this unreal darkness? See, this mask of suffering. Tear that away and be yourself again. So this was a good series, system to put in front of Vivekananda, this particular monastic picture of Vivekananda. When he came west, he did the whole, instead of the orange ochre cloth and turban and all that, he did the whole Nehru collar, black Christian priest, but a frock that went down. He like blended the best of, everywhere he went actually he was blending the best of Christian, Muslim, and Hindu, which is a very good lesson for us about the Muslims. I hear a lot of stupid talk about the Muslims, and just looking at the terrorist ones as being Muslims. Those aren't the real Muslims. Real Muslims are the devout practitioners who love Allah, who do zikr every day, who pray devoutly to them more than we pray, and keep God on mind all the time. And these are very serious and people that we should engage, we should welcome into our culture. And whether or not we welcome them as members of our actual population in our country, that's for others to decide. Not that we can do, but we can read the Quran. Vivekananda used to say, we want to go beyond Bible, Vedas, and Quran, but not by throwing them away, by reading them and understanding them first. So I talked to somebody at the break, and they said, I don't really understand what you mean by going from knowledge to truth. It seems silly that you would throw knowledge away. And I said, no, it's not so much that. It's like, you eat food and food is gone, but it's there with you. See, anything you do, like say we were talking about lust and anger, you temper those and they go away, but they're still in your mind. You still remember them. They come back once in a while, so you never can really dispense with anything. It's always there in the mind. As long as you have a mind, as long as you're a part of the mind, you will have to encounter all things in the mind at some point. And of course you can transcend the mind, that's the point. The same way you're not the body, you're not the mind. And it's your intelligence, when it gets refined via purification like this, that will help you do that. So knowledge then will be there, but you'll need to get it to truth. And then after you've realized the truth, if you want to come back to help others like he did, you'll bring knowledge back with you. But, it's not like Vivekananda was championing knowledge over everything else. And that's what we saw in him. He was at a reception in Chicago once. After he did this talk at Parliament for Religions, he was like the talk of society, you see. So one person went up and told him, so, Swamiji, you're so knowledgeable. We admire you so much for that. And he looked at her and he said, that's because you're a fool, madam. And so am I. So if I had to do this all over again, I'd do it all from the heart. So he was taking us to task, but he was taking himself to task too, all the time. He was very humble in his mastery, his outright mastery. And so that's why I say you read some of the complete works and you'll get a mind lift. Forget about the facelift or the belly lift. Do away with flab by exercise. But in the same way, the flab of the mind, you need to get rid of that and lessen your weight. Drop off the sandbags and so forth. And you will do that by the combination of this great knowledge and this opening of the heart, the two wings of the bird. So he only used that knowledge on us because we respected knowledge only. We didn't believe in God. We believed in power and money. What we really liked was knowledge. But we hadn't really heard true wisdom yet, because if it came from Christ, it had been text tortured by the time it got to us. There's a cartoon I saw recently with Lord Buddha sitting there next to Jesus. I love it. Same cartoon, right? And Buddha's saying, I wish I had to put into the Four Noble Truths, this law that nobody would caricature me, because now they're posing me as being fat. And I'm not fat. Actually, look at my pictures. I'm ascetic. My ribs are showing. Why are you making me fat? And Jesus said, yeah, man, I know what you mean. Hey, dude, I hear you. I've been living for 2,000 years as a blue-eyed blonde guy. So they're commiserating with each other about this overlays, these false superimpositions that people are putting over him. So you go back to the original Christ, Vivekananda said he was probably kneeling down with a bowl of rice, brown-skinned, green-eyed, Middle Eastern, right? Olive-skinned too. So whatever the case may be, you can picture the Lord as you will, because the Lord does change appearances as it comes into form, lifetime to lifetime, yuga to yuga, age to age, century to century. That's okay. But when one comes in front of you, what I started off saying was when you saw him in his Western attire, that was Easternized with Hindu and Muslim mix into his clothing because he designed it himself, this one piece of cloth he owned, Well, we're going to make it this way for the West. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. So he's let his hair grow out, and you see this really very handsome man, dressed just beautifully, and not in these robes that were often tattered, and turban put together in a hurry as he rushed out to help the world. So he was that multifaceted, but on the spot with the changes of the times and with the people that he needed to address. When he was in the West, he was actually fairly proper, although he could bite. And the Christian missionaries found that out when they criticized him. And but back in India, some of the devotees went to India for the first time. This is all by boat, back then. It took a long time to get there. And they came out of their guest house after sleeping. What would be, what do they call it when you have to recover from a flight?
Jet lag.
Jet lag, well, it's a steamer lag probably. So it came out of that, woke up at night, slept during the day, and woke up at night. So they went up this lane, this dusty lane, which some of you have walked with me, which is now paved. And they went into the grounds of the Bellarmont there, which is just being formulated. And they saw all these monks there dancing around a fire. And one of them was like rolling in the dirt, throwing handfuls of it on his body, saying, "I'm not worthy of Ramakrishna." And it turned out it was Swamiji, their teacher. They'd never seen him like that. It was just out of his mind, and so much in a fervor about Sri Ramakrishna. And there, in dusty robes and everything, rolling in the dirt, and just, divinely consumed. So they haven't seen that Vivekananda. They've only seen the one sort of more proper for the Western appearances that you had to put on. Anyway, more probably talk for satsang and questions, but this really epitomizes this system of detachment that by which following we will know a soul like that, and by which even studying we will understand a soul like that. To understand and know is probably going to be two different things. But we need to at least understand these great souls. So that 42 we were just looking at, I'm not going to even comment on it with a chart. We're going to go to 43 and 44. Just know that thus that one is the ascetic of steadfast wisdom who enjoys bliss forever, it concludes. If you destroy the tendency to be attached to enjoyment of the objects of the senses, then you all of a sudden find yourself free from most of the things that ail you. They come from objects, right? Food that's not pure, it's an object. You get a disease from it. A chair with a broken leg, you fall over and hurt yourself in it. So objects are just fraught with dangers. I have a chart called The Meaning of Objects here that I can show you in a minute if we have time. The real meaning of objects. Let's take 42 up then, 43 and 44. It is that incomparable one whose self is merged in Brahman alone, who is immutable and quiescent. His wisdom, pragya, is defined as the unwavering spiritual mode, the contents of which is the unity of Brahman and Atman, purged of all limiting adjuncts. Whosoever possesses that wisdom, existing without a break, is liberated in this life. That's called a Jivan Mukta. And that retreat in Seattle in a few days is all about the Jivan Mukta state and how they live in a non-dual state of Advaita. That word is beginning to come into the West. Advaita Vedanta, it's the non-dual side of Vedanta. Strictly non-dual. The I am Brahman, kind of I and my father are one level of the Vedanta. So, just in passing, because you've seen it placed there, we can look at this, not so much from the standpoint maybe of the actual quintuplication process, because I wrote a book on that, and it's in the shelf there. You can see it, small paperback, that you can study the quintuplication process. But I was talking a little about it in yesterday's class, and how the five elements came from your five senses. Everything is outside is finite, You see, and although it's finite by nature, it's infinite in content, so much of it. But that's come out of your senses. How do you know that? You just meditate on earth and smell, and then you meditate on water and taste, and you meditate on fire and sight, sun and sight, if you will, and then you meditate on touch with feeling, with air, and you meditate on hearing with ether. Those are the order of things, from subtlest to gross, or if you're coming involution style, from gross back to subtle. You connect those. Yoga, Vedanta, Buddhism, all of this is really about connection. When you detach from things like that, it's like the person at the break said, I don't see why we should give up knowledge to get to truth. You're not giving it up, you're connecting it. You can look at the whole thing as just yoga, it's just reconnection. Because yoga is a practice, it's 8-limbed practice. Vedanta is not such a practice, it's just stating what the truth is. See? So if you were to put together Vedanta with yoga, you'd have this great system. There are spiritual centers out there that I've gone to called Yoga Vedanta centers. That's how people have understood that. And so for those who just jump to the highest step, they think no practice is necessary because I'm already perfect. Good luck with that. And I hope it's true in your case, but it's not true in the case of most people. They can pretend the non-dual state. We just read about the false renunciate, right? And Shankar's verse there. The old man with matted locks and the shaven head and all that, and how they're just really doing everything for the sake of the belly. Before the class started, you were reading in the Gospel of Ramakrishna about that very thing. About how, we went on pilgrimage to Rishikesh or somewhere, and there we saw ascetics sitting around, you see. And they were just laying around, lazy, but as soon as we came up to them, they sat up and pretended like they were meditating. See. And then you go away and you look back and they're like sewing a hole in their cloth or something. See. Those are bhogi yogis. See. Bhoga means enjoyment. Those are false ascetics. And Holy Mother said about them, when you want to study the ascetic, look at Ramakrishna's direct followers, direct disciples. All 16 of them were true renunciates, true ascetics. Like that Swami Akhandananda who went and just slept 2 hours a day and worked the other 22 for the village. How did he do that? I would say that he had and this is an interesting teaching, he had an ability to skip the dream state. He didn't waste his time running his wheels 8 hours at night, dreaming, which turns you into a nervous wreck. You have to understand nadis. Nadis are nerves. So there they are in your body, but inside each nerve there are subtle nerves that are carrying prana. That's how you can move, by prana, not by food and not by the body alone. Without prana, the body falls lifeless, doesn't it? You see it at death. It's not the soul that vacated the body. The soul is there whether the body is dead or not. It's looking on its own death. The prana vacated the body. So man does not live by bread alone, lives by prana. And does not live by spirit either. Spirit's not here in the body. No man has seen God with these eyes. So you're looking at the absence of prana or its presence. See? So this man, Swami Akhandananda, I believe, had a nadi opened, a special nerve where he skipped the dream state and he went straight from waking to deep sleep. So 2 hours in deep sleep is far more nourishing than 1,000,000 hours dreaming. So he took his refection in deep sleep, came back, woke up, started working for the village. And he did this day after day, year after year, and everyone saw it. The assistant swamis that came to him, the brahmacharis that came for teachings, the village people saw him do this all the time. It wasn't like, I think I better take a day off, see, or go to sleep for a while. So, understanding, again, the nadis. Well, here are all, really pretty much all nadis. I used Sri Ramakrishna's picture here to show how prana, the 5 pranas, flow through everything. There's a prana in water, makes it flow. There's a prana in fire that makes it burn. There's a prana in air and makes it pervasive. And So you can extract the prana out of nature. We know that because when we eat food, it's from nature, and when we eat food, we get prana. It's not, the food itself turns into waste, right? And the food itself is an object of taste. None of those things are the real object. Real object is the essence in the thing. So you're taking essence from food, which came from nature, which is a combination of the 5 elements. And what's taking that prana is, as far as you're concerned, the 5 senses. Because they can see, they can taste, they can hear, they can smell better if they have food. So you connect that 5 elements to these 5 senses, and then you connect those 5 to the mind. Manaha prana sambandha. Connect everything to the mind, because the mind is where everything came from, then you want to connect it back. And that's the secret to getting a pure mind eventually. Because if these things are left all disparate and different from one another, and you're believing they to be different from one another, you think nature is separate from you, and so forth, then it's an impure state you're creating. Your mind gets fragmented and starts to think of everything as outside of you. Only, too, besides the separation, there's the idea that only that exists, and there's nothing. There's no source to it, you see. So you're proving yourself there's a source. But what are you doing when you're connecting the 5 senses to the 5 elements, to the 5 senses, to the 5-fold mind, is by the 5 pranas, you see. And like samana, digestion, apana, exhalation, and so forth. I didn't mean to get into the quintuplication process, but to bring this out in accord with this sloka, or these 2 slokas, is all about this purging oneself of limiting adjuncts so that Brahman and Atman can see their indivisibility, the state of non-separation, that as it comes down into these tattvas, they're called, 5 sheaths of body, energy, mind, intellect, and ego. The pancha kashas, that is physical space, vital space, mental space, intelligent space, and spiritual space. Those are called the 5 akashas. Basically, Om, Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha. We've chanted every morning, right? And the Hindu chants it several times a day, many, many times. It means Bhur, the physical world. Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha are physical, intermediary, and mental realms, you see, heavenly realms. So it's like saying earth, lower heaven, and higher heaven when you say Bhur, Bhuva, Swaha, because there's 4 other akashas that go inside. So when you're talking about the 5 akashas, then you're talking about they're all in you. I mean, it's just sort of another proof that the kingdoms of heaven are within you. You can study it as a philosophical system and say that's really interesting or that's marvelous, but the conclusion should be, oh, wait a minute, I'm studying my own self here, and all of this is my projection has come out of physical things, energy, thought, wisdom, from the spirit, from the Chidakasha. A couple Swamis named Chidakash, Chidananda, and Chidbhavananda, and so forth. Chidbrahmananda. It's the very space of this highest principle they name themselves after. So 5 coverings, 5 spaces, types of space, 5 elements we know about, but we don't know about their subtle existence, nor do you know about the 5 subtle senses very well. That is, that you see in a dream, you hear in a dream, you taste in a dream, you touch in a dream, and you smell in a dream. Hopefully smell very nice. So with these 5 things, you see, they're in your dream state. So this is another way of stepping back into your subtle body, leaving your physical body. What I'm saying here is that there are other ways to detach, or to reach these levels of detachment, you see, than, this is pretty much just a description, right, of what they are. But to actually reach them, there are methods. So this is one way. Waking, dreaming, and deep sleep, you have 5 elements and 5 senses in the waking. You also have 5 elements and 5 senses in your dream. and you connect them to the waking. First you do that because you know that this came out of you. That's the first thing to know. There's nothing alien from you. You're not different from nature in the way that they're two separate realities. You're different from nature in quality. You're sentient, it's insentient. So these truths come to you, see. But just because there's a difference there between matter and spirit doesn't mean that the two can't interact. It's called a relationship. We have a beautiful chant in the Upanishads about that. Om Adihi sa samyoga nimitta hetu parastri kaladakala pidristaha tam vishvarupam bhava bhutamidyam devam swachitastam upasya purvam. So these are 4 lines that basically state that you should meditate upon the Lord as thine own self within your heart, because that's the primal cause of the relationship between spirit and nature. You should know that. But it's also the ultimate source of all living beings, and of nature too, it says. And master of the 3 phases of time, paras trikala dakala pidrista, in which all of this happens, time and space. It's a master of these things. So that really is you until you lose mastery. That's called maya, avidya, ignorance. My teacher used to say there's really no word for sin in Sanskrit. There's just ignorance, avidya. You just lost track of the fact that this is all you're doing. And that losing track, as far as I'm saying right now, is because the connections were snapped or broken or became corroded. See? If you have a corroded connection, then you have science in the picture. See? It makes connections for you on the outside, but the connections to the actual source of the thing that's on the outside is corroded. So that knowledge is not getting used for anything except for violence and gain. Pleasure and gain. See? Name, fame, and gain game, Sri Krishna used to call it. You want name, notoriety, you want fame, and you want gain. You see? That's the game of science, really, at the bottom of it. When its knowledge should be used to get to from physical to metaphysical, and from metaphysical to transphysical, to find the source of existence. Well, that's going to fall in the realm of the seers. They're going to have to tell you about that, the seers that are living in these deeper akashas. So here you have the subtle senses and subtle elements to encounter, all connected to the 5 gross elements and the 5 senses of action. You might be seeing this on the screen if you're the live streaming audience right now, but you can all come up afterwards and study it closer, because this is pretty much the 24 cosmic principles of Samkhya, but fattened out to include other series of 5s, quintuplication, out of which all this came. If you know the system of 5s, then you can connect everything, and you connect it back to little old you. Who, me? I did this? So if you want to say, then there's also these 5 kinds of living beings. There's the rishis, the gods, the ancestors, the humans, and then there's the animals and so forth, and plants. So everywhere you look, there's these categories of 5s. And in accord, because we're running out of time, in accord with this sloka, which we read over again, it is that incomparable one whose self is merged in Brahman alone, who is immutable and quiescent. That wisdom is to find his unwavering spiritual mode, the context of which is the unity of Brahman and Atman, purged of all limiting adjuncts. These are all limiting adjuncts. See? And that wisdom that you get is pragya. And you get, what happens with that is the merging of your Atman with Brahman. First you're going to have to merge the tiny self with the great self. The ego has to die. I have received a command from the Divine Mother of the Universe that death must die. There's a famous song in India. So what's clinging to life is your ego. And it wants it over and over again with your ancestors. If you let that be in charge, that's exactly what it gets. The ego's in charge. So you squelch the ego, kill it, you see out, and you by merging it into the great self, which is its master. If you don't like the word self, look back to Buddha's original teachings. There are two selves here. One's the master over the other, he said. Who else would the master be? So there's this great self, which is Buddha nature, call it, and then there's a small self, which they would probably call, we'd call ahankara, and they'd call anatman, the opposite of atman. But the atman itself is the master of the anatman. And this is a way in which you dissolve one into the next until you find yourself like a hailstone falling into an ocean, merged in your true nature. An unspeakable, indefinable, unthinkable experience called samadhi. Whoever possesses that wisdom existing without a break is liberated in life. So what is enlightenment? Vedanta siddhanta niruktiresha brahmaiva jivaham sakalam jagatcha akanda rupa sthitireva moksho brahmadvitiyeshu trayaha pramanam. It is the final conclusion of the Vedanta that all is Brahman, time, space, living beings, and the world. Living in constant recognition of this fact is what is called enlightenment. Brahman is one, pure, perfect, without a second, and the revealed scriptures are the certain proof of this fact. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all.